All right, so thank you so much first, and I really appreciate the time to be here today on stage at the Risk Conference. So it's my first time in Slovenia, actually. So I've never been here before, really appreciate that. So, I'm main focused at McAfee, really working, building key integrations and key outcomes for our customers. So today we picked up one of the key outcomes is really future-proofing security operations. And what does it really mean? I will talk through that. And also prepared a couple of use cases to show you in live what it really means and what the McAfee approach is to that. So if you talk about future-proofing security operation, what does it really mean, right? So simple steps we can define. One, first we need to use all the capabilities that we have today in IT security to achieve my key outcome. And how does it work? Well, we cannot add more people to the problems we have. So we need to focus on, okay, how can we work together? And you see also with this under the McAfee logo, we changed that together as power. This also means we as vendors need to work together. We as partners need to work together and customers need to work together to achieve the key outcome. So in really using the efficiency and driving better efficiency in security operations. And how does it work? Well, we've built a lot of efforts for McAfee to have an open framework. That's the reason why we build key integration with open source tools, other vendors, we partner with other vendors, but also drove the business into an area where we create our own open source tools and publish them. I think most of you heard about already the open data exchange layer from McAfee that is posted on GitHub, where you are able to build every kind of integration you like within the McAfee framework. So before we go into the depth, I really want to explain you first, what does security operations really means? And first, I want to show you what kind of role does security operations in general mean. One, first it plays a role to achieve my key security outcomes. So I need to make sure that I'm covering my security aspects. So if either I need to neutralize emerging threats, either I need to safeguard vital data, we need to fortify critical environments, or we are transforming the business to the cloud, SecOps has a critical role in all these pieces. But not only that, SecOps has also a role to achieve my business programs, right? Supporting my digital transformation, but also achieving my regulatory compliances. So what we've done is we have a lot of conversation with organizations from the government, from finance, and we tried to help customers to go through a journey of maturing their security operations. And it's pretty easy, you can define the maturity of security operations in 3 areas. One area, first, that is where we talk about the SOC 100 level. Pretty reactive, so the security operations team are most of the time designed to deliver reporting, and pretty reactive in their incident response. Who knows that? Pretty common, right? But it's also, we see a lot of shift in the transformation where organizations applying and trying to use more intelligence. And we heard that from the previous speakers already, using intelligence in various ways, either if it's technical, organizational, or it's tactical and aligned to more organization, we need to be able to get better. Using intelligence that helps me really to go through a process that improves my investigation and response program. So this is where we start being more proactive, right? And most of the time we have conversations here in EMEA as well as in the States. Customers are most of the time in between the first and the second level. So trying to shift the phase to get to the second level of maturity. However, we see organization, of course, when you talk about the highest mature organization, leveraging also tools, additional tools that are applying analytics, not only intelligence, but also using analytics to improve my security posture. But also being more analytic driven on the one hand side, but also really helping the business and not being, as IT security, stopping the business, enabling the business to do more. So what is really the requirements and on the architecture that supports that? And basically, there are a couple of things to consider. One, we need to have an architecture first that supports my risk awareness. So I need to be able, of course, to enhance my risk analysis and situational awareness reportings, but also reducing my attack surface. That's the first thing. I think everybody from you heard already about risk appetite. what is my risk appetite? How much risk do I take for how much money? And this is exactly, we need to be aware of that, right? We can spend millions of money, but we're still not able to cover all these surfaces. So what is my attack surface? And how does it look like? And what is my risk mitigation to that? But it's also the incident response process. So the identification, investigation, and the containment of intelligence, or using intelligence to faster identify problems that we have in the network. Not only from a network, but also to the endpoint perspective. Also, when we're transforming to the cloud, we need to have the right capabilities to cover all these different vectors. But it's also discovering internal as well as external attacks, but also data breaches. So in the last phase, that's where we talk about the threat management phase, where we're applying additional intelligence that support the other processes. So really improving my security posture to help me to fasten that cycle. So now is the question, we understand now in the maturity model, we understand what are the key architecture requirements, but now is the question, you hear a lot of buzzwords in the world from Gartner, Forrester, all around SOPA and SOAR architectures. That is exactly where you start talking about what are the key capabilities we need to have in IT security operations today. And I don't want to confuse you with the slide, it has a lot of icons, but if we go through this quickly, just to understand, okay, that are the key capabilities from our perspective that we need to have in IT security operations. So it starts really at the bottom, the sensor grid. So I think security operations, what is the most important thing? We need to have the right sensors. It starts not only having sensors on my network, we need to have sensors also for my endpoints. And that's the reason why still today the endpoint is critical. Why? Because it has so much critical data that we need to understand the scope and fulfill my investigation. Of course, we can also combine that with additional network sensors and deception sensors. When you heard about honeypot systems, for example, that really try to understand, are there specific activities in my network that I was not discovering before? But if you go up the level, you see there the common service layer, which is pretty interesting. The common service layer is, of course, you see here ETL, extract, transform, and load, the way how we transform messages. But you also see in the last piece, messaging protocols. And that is where McAfee spent a lot of time really investigating on building an architecture around that, what we call the data exchange layer, which is basically built on MQTT to deliver messages, exchanging information. But for what is it important? First, sensors need to work autonomously together. And there's a reason. I'll give you an example to that. Think of that. You have an unknown file on your system, and you execute this file on your system. So it's unknown, but at the time, we need to have an immediate information if it's good or bad, right? So the endpoint needs to know that. And how does it know that? It needs to communicate. Communicate to other reputation services or other systems to understand if it's good or bad. But it's also helping me to enforce policies from upper levels of the chain. So in this case, we are able to enforce and use messaging to update defenses pretty quickly. And then we come into the data management. I love this level. Why? Because people think when we talk about SOC, SIM. It's one piece. SIM is one piece out of the security operations team. However, it's one out of multiple. You can see also tools like endpoint detection response tools that really helps me to not only get historical visibility like a SIM would give me, but also providing me the real-time insight into my enterprise. In the next level, you see the security analytics layer. And the security analytics layer is one of the most interesting things because that helps me to identify if I have a problem. So how do I identify a problem? There are three things. Guess what? Correlation. We correlate events and say that something is bad happened, we need to investigate it. I think it's the most common one. Second, we use intelligence. We use intelligence from either someone else, maybe another organization that is sharing intelligence with me is telling me, that is bad. Do you know and have you seen any information to that? And the third is applying analytics. Applying analytics really to fully understand, and machine learning, of course, to fully understand if something happened, is this an abnormal or not normal activity or an unusual activity? So that helps me with the identification. What helps me to fast my investigation? That is where we apply using intelligence platforms. Like tip platforms, as you've seen before, threat intelligence platforms where we build some key integrations with. And then, one of the newest and hottest topic, I think, in IT security at this moment, task and workflow automation. So how can we automate some key tasks in security operations that really help me to make my life much easier and reduce the complexity we have and maximizing the capacity? So if we overlay that, and first, before I go to the next slide, I think everybody agrees that there's no IT security vendor in the world that is able to deliver all these capabilities. That's the reason why we need to work together. And if we overlay that from a McAfee perspective, you see we partner with a lot of organizations. Of course, from a McAfee perspective, from an endpoint perspective, we have pretty strong sensors, but we are also now able to interconnect with other vendors. And to be honest, there are way more vendors out there that we integrate with, just to give you here a glance, an idea how we integrate with those. And you see Trapex from for example, deception censoring perspective. We have partnerships from a Cisco checkpoint perspective, how we enrich these information and these efforts. And I also have a couple of use cases I want to show you in a minute, how we apply security also to other vendors. At the end, to make it faster, right? And on the top, you see also, we built some integrations, for example, with the EMEA Intelligence sharing platform, a threat intelligence platform which is open source, developed by NATO a couple of years, now owned by the CERT Luxembourg. So it's a platform that combines intelligence feeds from multiple sources. So using an intelligence now platform that is able to help me to fasten my investigation and my response process. And on the top, of course, we start talking about typical vendors like Phantom, Cyber, and Demisto that are driving key integrations with us, but also helping to automate some key tasks. So the biggest question, basically, why we do all of that? Why are we trying to get better? Why are we trying to now, why do we need to integrate and work together from a vendor perspective, but also as a partner and customer perspective? Three simple things. First, we need to improve my security effectiveness. We need to get better in security effectiveness. And it all starts with that. We need to prove that it works. But second, we need to drive operational efficiency. And you've seen we cannot add more tools, we cannot even add more people. So at some point, we need to say, how can we operate the technologies in a smart way? And how can we reduce the people that are working on an incident? How can we reduce the manual effort that it takes us? How can we improve the way how we handle incidents at all? But it's of course also people shortage. You can also call this in this area cost, right? Reducing cost is one area, but it's also looking at the people shortage. Do we have skilled people that are able to help me to deliver that what I need to achieve in security operations? And to give you some ideas how we build integrations, I want to show you a couple of screenshots to that. First, a quick description on that. How do we drive integrations to improve my security effectiveness? And we use one example where we leverage our McAfee Advanced Threat Defense, our ATD platform that basically does static and dynamic code analysis. So by nature, it creates a report. And I think every sandbox creates a wonderful report, right? But how much value do you get out of a report? Well, you get a lot of visibility, but to be honest, pretty useless, right? Because you need to make it actionable. You need to make this intelligence that you just produced actionable to adapt your defenses. So what we've done, we automatically publish this information via our data exchange layer. So basically, we finish an analysis, we automatically publish this information across the whole enterprise that we first, by nature, update every single endpoint. Pretty straightforward. Updating every single endpoint and telling them, look, that is bad. That's by nature the way how we build the platform. But think of that. We do that from a hash perspective, right? But we produce also domains. We produce IP addresses. Who could benefit from domains? Well, why would you ever resolve a domain to an IP address where you know this is bad? DNS blackholing. That's the reason why we partner with technologies like Infoblox. So DNS blackholing is one key attribute. But let's look at the next piece. IP addresses. Who could benefit from these IP addresses that we produced? Well, key firewalls. And this is exactly where we build key integrations with Checkpoint and Fortinet ready to consume this information and updating defenses at the same time. You might think, well, this IP address is not valid anymore in 2 minutes, right? But this tells you also in 2 minutes, you need to be fast. So in this case, having an automated process to produce intelligence, but also to publish intelligence to my updating defenses. And that's exactly how we leverage sandbox intelligence really to help me to update my endpoint and network defenses. And to give you a quick glance on this, how that looks like from a technology perspective, you can see here a screenshot from our advanced threat defense, which is able to receive files, submissions from multiple sources. If it's come from a network, if it's come from an endpoint, if it's coming from email, if it comes from web, whatever sources, we go through a process of analytics, try to understand if it's good or bad. And we produce a wonderful, nice, shiny report. So you can see information maybe we identified it as malicious, and in this report you see a lot of information that are critical to my business. So we're updating, of course, on the one hand side, all the McAfee endpoints, but it would be also interesting to push that to others. In this case, we automatically push these intelligence also, for example, to Checkpoint. So what you see here also behind me is the Checkpoint Management Console, how we publish information most of the time in groups. You can see we automatically add IP addresses to this group and updating defenses at the same time. So let's look at that also from a Fortinet perspective. There are so many other ways. I could add so many other firewalls. Really, it's not the question if we can integrate. Of course we can integrate, but the question is what kind of key outcome you want to achieve as a customer. Giving you another aspect of that. Because we use now McAfee Intelligence to enrich network defenses and push and share intelligence across others. Why do we not do that the other way around? So maybe you use Cuckoo sandboxing or use other sandboxes that are out there in the wild. You produce intelligence that could also benefit McAfee, right? So in this case, we leverage, for example, the sandbox from Checkpoint. So as soon as you have a sandbox that produces intelligence, this could benefit also others. So by nature, you're able to also integrate and interact with these technologies, and this information get automatically published via our data exchange layer. One, to update, of course, every single endpoint from McAfee, and at the same time, we identified this as bad. And this is exactly how we apply network security or network intelligence that we produced to update my endpoint defenses and fasten that cycle. So let me show you also that in a couple of screenshots. We have here a user went to a bad website, and it created actually, of course, log entries in the Checkpoint firewalls. And this information get automatically published via the McAfee ecosystem. So all this information, of course, has been integrated into the fabric, but you see also we launched a new program for our e-policy orchestrator called the SIA DXL Task Manager, where you're able to consume these DXL messages. So you can take this information to, for example, automatically set reputations in your database. Pretty straightforward. Another use case is really driving the way of improving my security and network hygiene. Just to give you a glance, what actually happened if we have an endpoint that has a lot of activities, malicious activities? Well, you would wait until you get the alerts, right? And then you maybe try to investigate it. So at the time, when we identify multiple activities as suspicious on the endpoint, we automatically share this information, of course, through our central management e-policy orchestrator. But what we will do automatically, we create an automated response to send a DXL message to Cisco PX Grid and ICE to update, for example, systems from a network perspective. So using intelligence that we have, information on the endpoint to improve my security or network hygiene, if you want to call it, where we're now able to bridge the data exchange layer fabric from McAfee and Cisco PX Grid. So that is a way how we build key integrations, really improving security effectiveness and driving efficiencies. In the next use case, I also want to show you first how that looks like, of course, from a management platform perspective. So we have our endpoint security platform. It creates a lot of events that are malicious and suspicious activities, and we automatically publish this information to Cisco ICE and quarantine the system from my network at the time we sent the DXL message. let's go into the piece of talking about efficiencies. How can we drive better efficiencies and work with tools like orchestration tools to help me to minimize the complexity in security operations and maximizing the capacity I have? And for that, I want to outline a short use case. One, think of that. We have malware, or we have an unknown file that we investigate, well, and we define it as bad. And you've seen in the previous use case that we updated defenses immediately. Well, okay, you might want to have another stepstone in between that maybe does some additional validation. That's the reason why we built some key apps on, for example, the Phantom platform to consume DXL messages. So we consume DXL messages on the one hand side, extracting the artifacts and taking additional playbooks. We get a lot of questions from organizations that say, well, you are a vendor. If you say it's bad, I need to have other vendors confirming that. That's the reason why you have a lot of times requests of multi-sandbox analysis. One sandbox is not enough. We need to come to a final conclusion. We need to have multiple information. And how you do that? This could be one reason, or this could be one step, how you build orchestration and tools and playbooks to automate these tasks. So we finish an analysis, we take this information and we detonate the files at other sandboxes as well. And at the end, we create a final verdict score out of all this information. But what could be also interesting, why do we not take this information and validate with others? Why do we not also ask VirusTotal, is there any other vendor out there that can tell me if it's good or bad? Or maybe we also leverage my own intelligence platform and ask, have you seen this before in my enterprise? Well, if we come to a conclusion, what's the next step? Well, maybe you would like to know which endpoint in your enterprise has specific information, right? So that's the reason why we can also publish DXL messages and request services. What you see here is basically a live lookup from every single endpoint via the McAfee Data Exchange Layer fabric. Asking, which endpoint has exactly these files, these connections, or these processes? Well, you might also go back in time and you would like to maybe use big data lakes like Hadoop or Elasticsearch to go back in time of 3 years through your company history data and say, have you seen something in the past? And do we need to take an action on that? And if we come to a conclusion, what do we need to do? We need to update defenses as soon as possible. In this case, we're automatically sharing this information, one via DXL to update all the McAfee endpoints, the McAfee network controls like IPS systems or others. And to show you that also, of course, we built a couple of use cases for that. Hello? So this is a Phantom platform, the Phantom Cyber platform, where we built some key apps and integrations. So you can see we published a lot of apps, of course, that are working with these tools together. But you can also see that we built at the bottom here an app for DXL to interact with our data exchange layer fabric. That means to communicate and interact with McAfee, you need to have a simple integration pattern for that. So either subscribing or publishing DXL messages, pretty simple, but you are also able to use services. And how does it look like in a playbook? This is a typical playbook we built on the Phantom platform, interacting with all the different McAfee technologies. And think of that. You finish an analysis, and the first thing you would like to do, you would like to consume this information, and at the top you see VirusTotal check. Maybe I check with other reputations. Maybe I ask reputations for my intelligence platform. Or you would like to get information about the command and control server connection. Or you would like to send an email to the SOC first and then automatically hunt for these files. And at the bottom you can see there's another arrow going to the centerpiece, which basically is a filter, which just defines if I have indicators found in my enterprise, I need to respond to them quickly as I can. In this case, we automatically take key containment actions to block IP addresses, to automatically, for example, push additional DXL messages, setting higher reputation scores, creating tickets in ServiceNow, and sending an email to the analyst and tells you, this system has an indicator based on an analytics we've done. And that is where you start talking about the task automation, right? Key tasks what we automate in security operations to help you to do that much faster with less effort. You can see a lot of activities that we've done, and you're seeing also that it's growing from a maturity perspective. Most of the time, organizations going into the area of workflow automation and using these orchestration tools, most of the time start doing the easy lifting piece. So the easy stuff like, I need to collect data, or I need to confirm a couple of information. But to make a final decision, there must be a human in the loop. But to be honest, that is also what is shifting. If you have the confidence in the data, in the right sensors you are having, and the integration steps, you have the confidence to automate also making decisions. And that is a way also the path where you see this is one of the highest mature organizations that are leveraging these kind of tools. So let me show you a couple of things. So we go through a use case, similar use case if you've seen. So we go through an analysis report, McAfee investigates a far less bad, we automatically share this information, and we launch a new incident on the orchestration platform. And if we go into this incident, you can see in the center all the artifacts that the Phantom platform extracted from the activities. But what you see also on the left-hand side, all these green arrows, that is the automated playbook we followed and automatically investigated with other tools if there are artifacts, if there are indicators to automate some key tasks for that as well. What you can see here basically, that are the live active response lookups, so our lookups from every single endpoint if there are specific artifacts. So this gives me insight that I have two systems in my enterprise that have artifacts at this moment right now, and we need to follow up with further actions on that. You can see also we published this information into our intelligence database and set a new reputation to update every single endpoint from this information near real time. So how does it look like from a McAfee perspective as a response? You can see here that we set new reputations in the database. We created DXL messages, especially from a reporting perspective. Hello? And automatically also published and quarantined these IP addresses from our IPS sensors. So you can see also multiple ways how we leverage tools and an open communication framework to interact with multiple technologies, multiple vendors and solutions. And one thing really, my scheme for the presentation was future-proofing security operations. And to be honest, it's not only proving security operations, but it's also improving or future-proofing the business. We believe that together is power, and I don't really like marketing terms, but to be honest, it's true. In this case, we need to work together to overcome that phase and need to solve the key customer challenges. And this is exactly where we believe, together is power. With that, I thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the 2 days here at the conference. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.